I'm sure as he was lying there being crushed to death, Giles Corey never thought he'd be in a situation where hundreds of pounds worth of rocks were being placed on his body and he would slowly die out over the course of 3 or 4 days. Now, I must admit, I was shocked to find out that Giles Corey wasn't as innocent as he's often portrayed in TV and other media. The truth is, he was a very active participant in the Salem Witch Trials, given that whoever's a part of his PR team deserves a raise because they did a fantastic job of washing that part of his story. In fact, it's often left out most of the time, so you wouldn't know unless you dived in a bit deeper. Now, for those who might not be aware, Giles Corey is famously known as one of the victims of the Salem Witch Trials. However, unlike the other victims of the Salem Witch Trials who were hanged or died of exposure in jail, Giles Corey was famously cursed to death. Now, what makes his story so interesting, and I think it spawns a lot of lore, is the fact that when Giles Corey was being interrogated, he was defiantly known not to answer any questions, but was instead known to only say 2 words. And those 2 words were more weight. Now, as he was lying there being slowly crushed to death under the weight of rocks and other stones, Giles Corey's final words were allegedly a curse that he cast upon the sheriffs of Salem and the town itself. That's another story for another day. But what a lot of people don't know about his story is that Giles Corey was an active participant in the condemnation and accusation of other witches. Again, a part of his story that is often left out. Now, as I move through the rest of this video, there's one thing that I'm going to say about Giles Corey, and I think it's something that applies to many people, whether or not they like to believe it or not, but that's the fact that Giles Corey was both the victim and a victimizer. Like I mentioned, I was shocked to find out that he had a really active role in the Salem Witch Trials. He would be one of those people in the courtroom throwing accusations at the women being tried or the men being tried, accusing them of being witches themselves. And ironically, he shared some of the same charges with these women, and yet he flew under the radar. And if you ask Giles Corey, I'm sure that he never would have thought he would have been a victim of the same system that he was helping to perpetuate. In fact, he had all of the important things that should have protected him from that. He was white, he was male. And the reason I do point this out is because in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, there was still enslavement happening. There were Black people there. There is a woman on this app who does a wonderful job explaining that. I'm going to try to find her videos, but he was white, male, owned land, had a wife, contributed to society. None of the things that would have indicated that he had any sort of ill intent, was a warlock or a wizard, whatever language they were using back then. But yet and still they found a way to accuse him and his wife of being witches. Now, if you're smart, you know that this was all about politics, land grabs, personal grievances. But alas, this was a problem because this individual who should have been protected by these systems again fell victim to him. Now, like I mentioned earlier in this video, Giles Corey is both a victim and a victimizer. Again, although he practiced no witchcraft himself personally, nor did his wife, I'm sure, he was eventually accused and he met an untimely end. Although he was actually old. He probably wasn't going to live much longer, but he was old and died prematurely. I'll say that. But he also participated in the deaths of other women by virtue of being in the courtrooms and accusing them. Even if that was cultural and he truly believed it, personally, the jury's still out on that. One of the main things that I took away from listening to Giles Corey's story is that there are a lot of parallels with what happened back in 1692 in Salem and what's happening today. On one hand, you have a lot of people who turned a blind eye to what was happening, injustices be damned. And on the other hand, you have those active participants, those who directly contributed to the problem. And it's fine so long as they are a part of that in-group, so long as those consequences don't come back around and grab them too. But as soon as they're met with the same fate, same situations, and same outcomes that others before them had suffered while they actively participated, now it's a problem. Again,